Sleep training, or how you can teach your child to sleep alone in less than 4 weeks without treating him badly or letting him cry it out. Hi, welcome to Therapy Matters, where we talk about everything that goes on inside your head, inside your mind, because what happens inside your mind matters. So I get asked this question a lot, and I recently had a talk with some people on a Facebook group, and I came to realize that there is a real need for this information out there. So I decided to finally film this video after postponing it for nearly 1 year, because I had other stuff to work on. So if you don't know anything about me, I'm a therapist. I have been in practice for over 10 years, and I'm also the father to an amazing 3.5-year-old girl. So I speak from both points of view, as a professional and as a parent as well. So let's talk about how you can sleep train your child to sleep alone without having you to behave badly with him, without letting it affect your relationship with him. And to start off, I want to quickly go through a list of benefits that sleeping alone brings to a child's life. And when we talk about why you should want to teach your child to sleep alone, we should acknowledge that there are numerous benefits to this, and that we can divide them into two different categories. And that is benefits for the child and benefits for the parent. Now, the benefits for the parent are equally important as are the ones for the child alone, because you need energy and balance and calmness and all of that to actually be a good parent to your child. So whether you feel that teaching him how to sleep alone is a selfish thing to do or not, it is with benefits, and you also need to benefit from this, and the relationship with your child stands to benefit from this. So keep that in mind, that a certain dose of selfishness is required in order to successfully pull this off. So now let's go through the main benefits, starting with the benefits for the child in particular. And when a child sleeps alone, he begins to acquire a number of abilities and a number of traits. The first one is that he learns to be independent. He also starts feeling competent about his own life. And that is a very important aspect, especially later on in his life. We all have a need for competence. We need to feel competent about ourselves and about our own lives. It is a fundamental human need. And in order for him to successfully develop that ability to feel competent, to know how to get into the state of feeling competent, the sooner you can train him into doing that, the better. The child also, when sleeping alone, he develops a safe attachment style. That is, of course, if he was taught how to sleep alone without it being an abusive way. If you can teach him to do this in a non-abusive way, which is the way that I am teaching you how to do, then everything is fine, and he learns to develop a safe attachment style, meaning that he is confident that he is loved, and he is confident of the relationship he has with his parents in this case, even if he is not clinging on to them, even if they are not in his immediate physical vicinity. Another major benefit in him sleeping alone is that he develops his physical and emotional self-regulation without needing to be stuck to his parent at all times. And all the while being secure in knowing that the parent is never too far away in case he needs him or her. So The physical and emotional self-regulation part is really, really important. And that is one of the things that the crying it out method was trying to achieve. They were saying, leave the child to cry it out, because in the process he learns self-regulation. Now, that was only half true, because if you do that to a child, you run the risk of traumatizing him. And yes, he does learn to self-regulate, but he learns to self-regulate out of necessity, as a coping mechanism, not as a positive ability. And the nuance here is very important, because it is one thing to teach someone to swim by just throwing them in the water, and it's swim or sink, or swim or die. And it's another thing to teach him how to swim and to gradually ease him into swimming. Of course, you can learn you can learn how to swim both ways, but one of them may leave you scarred for life, whereas the other one simply teaches you a skill that's useful later on in life. Another benefit for the child in sleeping alone is that he has an improved quality of sleep. And that is because he isn't feeling cramped, he isn't feeling constrained, he isn't bumping into the parent's body while sleeping, and all of that. And this last one is also a benefit to the parent. So moving on gradually to the benefits for the parents, but I just want to iterate then that on this topic of improved quality of sleep is that when having an improved quality of sleep, the benefits are numerous for the child and for the parent. If the child gets a better quality of sleep, he will develop cognitively faster. So, in other words, he will be smarter. He will be much more better equipped to handle his emotional states. So he will have less dramatic mood swings. He will be a lot less moody, simply because he's well rested and he has all of his abilities at his disposal. Limited as they may be for a child, but still. So that means that the relationship with the parent and the interaction with the parent and pretty much any other person is much easier. So it is much easier to deal with the child who is well rested and who is composed and is pretty much at balance, than to deal with a child who is moody because he isn't sleeping well and he is angry for no reason, at least no apparent reason, or he is in a bad mood all the time and all of that. So take that into account as well. Now, I said that improved quality of sleep is also a benefit for the parent, and it obviously is. If the child performs better when he is well rested, so does the parent. So if you are well rested, when interacting with the child throughout the day, being well rested, you will probably be more patient, more understanding, more supportive, and so on. Hopefully, at least. But at least you have the battery life necessary in order to deal with the child, and of course to deal with whatever else is going on in your life, the job that you have, any other obligations, and so on. So do not take this lightly, because it's a huge factor in a lot of so-called mental health issues. Lack of sleep plays a huge part. So take this lightly at your own peril. Now, what are some other benefits to sleeping without the child for the parent? Well, there are more opportunities to connect and to be intimate. And that is even if the two of you, the parents, aren't necessarily in the habit of having sex right before going to sleep. Connection and intimacy are not limited to just connecting on a sexual level. It can be any number of things, even sitting next to each other, reading before going to sleep can be viewed as an intimate moment between the two of you. So keep that in mind. Another benefit is that when a child is accustomed to sleeping alone, he will more easily adapt to sleeping in other places, such as the grandparents' house, such as daycare, such as on holidays, when you're going on vacations, I mean. So that's a huge benefit, even if you don't realize it now, but consider the fact that the child adapting to daycare or to going to school is helped in a large part by him being independent, by having developed his self-regulation, and by him having a secure attachment in relationship to his parents. So the transition to daycare, kindergarten, or school is much easier if the child is already sleep trained. Another benefit is that when the child sleeps alone, the bedroom turns back into an adult space, which allows for greater flexibility when it comes to its use, when it comes to what activities can go on there, when bedtime is on, and so on and so forth. So this frees up an entire section of the house to be experienced by the adults in that house. So that's another important benefit, because not only you would maybe like to connect with your partner and do some things together, but you would also maybe like to do some things for yourself, like in like some self-care activity, or practicing a hobby, or just sitting by yourself and recharging. So that's something that you can easily do if the child has his own space and is not imposing on your own. So these are the benefits, the main ones. There are, of course, many others. But this begs the question, when should you sleep train a child? And I would say that you shouldn't even attempt to sleep train a child who is younger than 6 months old. So I won't go into much detail when it comes to this, because I'm not planning on making this recording to be 7 hours long. But I will say that if your child is younger than 6 months, he lacks the psycho-emotional maturity and the psycho-emotional development required for him to be sleeping alone. And if the child is older than 6 months, it works fine, with minor adjustments depending on the actual age of the child. So, for instance, I've trained my daughter to sleep alone for when she was 7 months old. However, were I to do this with a child who is maybe 3 years old, the approach would be somewhat different. It wouldn't be radically different, but it would be somewhat different, because you need to take into account the different developmental stages that every child is at. Okay, so a child who is 7 months is pretty much non-verbal, and whereas with a child who is 3 years old or 5 years old, you can actually have a conversation, a two-way conversation. So with the child who is 7 months old, you get to explain and to tell him or her things, but you don't necessarily have a two-way conversation at that point. But like I said, you can do this with any child who is older than 6 months. The difference is that you need to, like I said, you need to adjust your strategy a little bit, and you need to take into account that the older the child is, the more resistance you will probably experience from his side and from your own side as well. So take that into account and adjust your expectations. But this works no matter what age the child is. So don't worry, it's not anything radically different if your child is 4 years old, let's say. Okay? Now, why don't some parents sleep train their child? Why do a lot of them resist this idea? And some of them resist this idea furiously, I must say. And there's two main reasons that this happens. The first one has to deal with the fear on the parent's part that in order for this to happen, that he or she will need to treat the child badly. And part of the reason for this is that crying out technique that I mentioned earlier, that was really popular in the 90s, give or take a decade. And this method is severely flawed, like I mentioned before, and it runs the risk of, and it's a high risk of traumatizing the child as well as the parent, because the method involved placing the child in his bed or in his crib or whatever was the designated place, and just closing bidding him good night and just closing the door. And if he started crying, you were supposed to just wait, meaning that he would cry and eventually he would stop, and that meant that he was ready for sleeping alone, which is, as you can imagine, is extremely harsh as a method on the child, because even if he or she doesn't know what's going on, let's say that we're dealing with a child who is a lot older than 7 months. Let's say that we're dealing with a child who is 7 years old. Even if he or she knows what's going on and the parent explained and everything like that and all of that, it's still a really harsh approach, because you're basically throwing him in the water and waiting for him to swim. And it can be, it doesn't necessarily need to be like that, but it can be extremely traumatic for the child. And some children who undergo this training method end up crying for 7 or 8 hours a night, at least in the beginning. And you can imagine the child crying for 7 to 8 hours a night, and the parent crying on the other side of the door, crying for the same 7 or 8 hours, and wishing that they could go in and comfort the child, but being prohibited in doing so because the method says that you are not supposed to do that, because then you are not allowing him to learn and all of that, which is, in my professional opinion, is an illogical and inhumane way of teaching this ability to a child. So the method that I will describe is much more humane, but it's also much more logical when you take into account the human nature and how we behave as human beings. So don't worry don't worry, I will describe everything about it a little bit later. Now, the second reason that a lot of parents resist the idea of sleep training a child is because they themselves have separation anxiety. And that is the higher in levels the older the child is. So if you've been sleeping with your child for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, it is not only him that experiences separation anxiety, it is also the parents who experience that. If that's the case, you will resist the idea of sleep training your child simply out of fear and out of separation anxiety. And in order to address that, you might need to go into therapy and have that sorted out. And there's a third reason. I wish I could say that it's rather uncommon, but it's unfortunately rather common. And it is unconsciously using the child sleeping in your bed as an excuse to avoid intimacy or sexual intimacy with your partner. And if that's the case, again, you might want to undergo some therapy in order to sort that out. Because, first of all, you can't really continue to sleep in the same bed as your child indefinitely. I mean, by the time he or she turns 17, it gets rather odd. And second of all, you can't escape having that discussion about your relationship, about your marriage and all of that indefinitely. So if there's a problem in the relationship, or if there's a problem with your self-image or your libido or anything like that, you might want to look into that, because problems like this that don't get addressed do not tend to work themselves out. They just tend to get worse as time goes by, and this ends up affecting the whole household and everyone else who is living in that house. So let's get to the exact method that you can use to sleep train your child. First of all, in order to understand how to apply this, you need to first understand why the child cries the first few times that you try to get him to sleep alone. Now, if it's a very small child, meaning less than 6 months of age, the main reason is survival. The main reason that he cries is survival. Human children aren't designed to be self-sufficient in the beginning, aren't designed to be completely autonomous and completely self-sufficient until much, much later in life. So the reason that a baby who is less than 6 months old cries when left alone is to ensure his own survival. And that's why, part of the reason why you shouldn't attempt to sleep train a baby when he's younger than 6 months, because it might work, but it's not a great idea, simply because of the potential ramifications of this. So yes, you should sleep with the baby near you or in the same bed as you for the first 6 months of his life, and that is my professional recommendation on this. Now, if the child is aged anywhere between 6 months and 2 to 3 years, the main reason that he is crying is separation anxiety. What this means is that he is very attached to you as his parent, as his primary caregiver, like like it's sometimes called in the professional literature. And he or she simply does not want to spend time apart from you. Now, this is on the one hand very sweet of him thinking like that, but on the other hand, it's something that could lead to potential problems further down the road if it is not addressed properly. Now, the fact that he is very attached to you and does not want to spend time apart from you is very sweet. But you, as his or her parent, are supposed to teach him that he can, in fact, spend time apart from you without the connection between the two of you being affected, without the connection between the two of you being broken or anything like that. And that is something that expands his universe. It expands his understanding of the world. It is not a bad thing for him to learn that he can actually physically be separated from you, but still remain attached to you emotionally. It is not a bad thing. It is not abandonment trauma like so many so-called experts claim. Abandonment trauma is caused by abandonment, not by encouraging a child to be autonomous and to be independent. It is this type of wrongful interpretation of certain concepts in psychology that has led to all of these ideas floating around the internet which do more harm than good. You are not abandoning your child if you are encouraging him to be autonomous. You are abandoning your child if by encouraging your child to be autonomous, you understand kicking him out of the house and closing the door behind him. Yeah, that's abandonment. Or leaving him somewhere without explaining or without offering your emotional support. That is abandonment, of course, but it is not what I'm advising you to do. Like I said, between 6 months and 2 to 3 years, he's crying because of separation anxiety, which can be seen as a problem or as something to be learned, as an opportunity to learn something new. It's like, first, he doesn't know how to play in a swing, and then he learns to play in a swing. You can look at it like that. It's simply an ability to be acquired. Now, if the child is older than 3 years, the most likely reason that he is crying when you attempt to get him to sleep alone is the fear of the unknown. And this gets disguised in many cases as the fear of the dark. No? Fear of the dark. But fear of the dark is basically fear of the unknown. We don't fear the dark, we fear what might be hiding in the dark. Now, in all of these cases, no matter what the age of the child actually is, he can be helped to get over his fears, to learn new skills, to develop new abilities with the emotional support of the parent. And that's why, like I said, crying it out is a no-go technique as far as I'm concerned, because it deprives the child of that exact emotional support, which would be the actual thing that enables him to get over his fears and to acquire these new abilities. So it's mind-boggling that someone, somewhere in time, has thought of this as a good idea. So the actual method of sleep training a child is composed of 2 parts. It's the preparation phase and the actual execution of the training. The preparation phase means that you are preparing the child for what is about to to happen. You should start the preparation phase maybe 2 weeks before actually doing the sleep training, and you can start preparing him or her by simply letting him know what's going to happen. Something like, look, my dear child, we're in about 2 weeks, starting next Monday, or pick a certain milestone that he can understand. Now, like when we get back from vacation or something like that, we are going to learn how to sleep alone in your own, you are going to learn to sleep in your own bed. I'm going to help you. You'll see that it's going to be interesting, it's going to be a new adventure, and so on. And try to ease him into the idea, so he's at least aware of the fact that this thing is going to happen. Now, if we are talking about a really small child, someone who is like let's say between 6 months and 1 year old, don't dismiss his lack of verbal skills and consider that to be a lack of understanding, because if you take the time to explain to him what's going to happen, like if he was an older child, how much he will understand is up for debate, but he will understand some of it, and at least he will understand the intention behind it all. Children are at least at that very young age, are very astute observers of non-verbal cues. So if he gets the communication from you, he gets the main ideas, even if he doesn't necessarily understand all of the words that you're telling him. Okay, so go through the trouble of doing this preparation phase, even if you think that your child is too young to understand all of that. He might not understand all of it, but he doesn't need to understand all of it. He just needs to get the gist of it, okay? And keep alluding to this during the 2 weeks, but don't go overboard, okay? So don't go nagging him every couple of hours that, you know, this is going to happen, because this sort of builds up anticipation anxiety instead of building up excitement and curiosity and all of that. Okay, so try to do it every couple of days once, so don't overdo it, and try to look for a good enough moment to do that. So when he's excited, like, oh, you learned to do this new thing, you know, we're going to learn to do another new thing, and you know, try to get a little bit creative with how you choose the moments. And then there comes the time to do the actual sleep training. And what do you do then? Well, first of all, the sleep training takes place in the child's bed, not on the parent's bed. You don't put the child to sleep in the parent's bed and then move him to his bed, because sometimes when that happens, the child wakes up in the middle of the night, and he sees that he's in a different environment than the one he fell asleep in, gets disoriented, and starts experiencing fear or anxiety or some other negative emotion. And you don't want to do that. You want him to, if he wakes up in the middle of the night, to see that he wakes up in the same place that he fell asleep in. And yes, of course, his parent isn't with him at that particular moment, but at least there's some consistency across the timeline. Okay, so the consistency in this case being the space that he's in. So, like I said, the training takes place in his own bed. You go through the routine that you have for falling asleep. maybe taking a bath, maybe brushing his teeth, maybe brushing his hair, maybe reading a bedtime story and all of that. Then you kiss him goodnight and either wait for him to fall asleep or simply leave the room. Now it's up to you. It's easier if you wait for him to fall asleep, but both work. What you do is that after you have left the room, you hang on, at least the first few nights. You hang a while behind his door and see if he really fell asleep, if he fusses, if he makes sounds, if he tries to communicate any sort of discomfort. And if the discomfort is noteworthy, you can re-enter the room and soothe him and put him back to sleep. If not, let him sleep. Now, what happens is that the first couple of nights, the child might wake up pretty frequently throughout the night. And when this happens, you need to, you or your husband or wife need to immediately go to him and pick him up, soothe him, make sure that he calms down, and then again place him on his bed and let him sleep. He might, I'm a little bit exaggerating this, but not as much as you'd think. Some children might wake up 100 times during the night, at least the first couple of nights when you attempt this. And what you need to do is that you need to prepare yourself emotionally and physically to withstand that. Because if he wakes up 100 times during the first night, you need to go to him 100 times. Soothe him, calm him down, put him back in his bed. Do not take him in your bed, even if you're tired, even if you're falling asleep and so on. Put him in his bed, then return to your bed and sleep. And if he wakes up again in 30 minutes or an hour, repeat the process and do that as long as is necessary for him to learn. And that's the thing that's happening in that process. The child, he or she, learns that it is okay to sleep alone, because when I have a discomfort and I start crying or I try to draw attention that something is bothering me, the parent comes and attends to my needs. And that's the basis of the entire sleep training. The entire sleep training is done in order for the child to really understand that this is how things are, that I can sleep alone and my parents are never too far away. They can hear me if I cry, and they attend to me as quickly as possible, and I am in no particular danger. Okay? Now, the sleep training doesn't need to be done by just one parent. You can take turns. If the child's needs are attended to, it doesn't matter all that much if it's the mother or the father. It doesn't matter all that much which of the parents comes to his aid when needed. It just matters that someone comes and that he doesn't feel alone, neglected, and so on. And that's it. You just do this until within the space of 4 weeks, the child finally starts sleeping throughout the night without waking up, Or if he wakes up, because he might, if he wakes up, he can fall back to sleep without needing the assistance of an adult. That's what you're trying to achieve, and you're trying to achieve that without making him cry it out and without relying on him alone to find solutions to whatever ails him, because he's not, in my opinion, even if he's older, even if he's 7 years old, in my opinion, he is not equipped to handle all of that by himself. That's why he has you in his life. Now, what are some reasons that this method might not work? 3 of them in particular. The first one is that you weren't clear and or firm enough when talking to the child about learning how to sleep alone. And if that's the case, think about any situation in which, for instance, he refuses to brush his teeth at night. I mean, do you just fold and say, yeah, you don't want to brush your teeth, that's fine. I mean, okay, I know that it happens sometimes when you're at the edge of your everything, of your patience and everything, but I do hope that it doesn't happen a lot, okay? So it shouldn't happen a lot when it comes to sleeping alone as well, because it's a life skill just as much as brushing your teeth is. And you shouldn't let his moods or his fears dictate what he or she should learn how to do. The second reason is that you gave up too soon, and this is the most common one. Parents who are already exhausted tend to give up much too easily when it comes to sleep training. If you just tried for a few days and not even tried all that much during those few days, if you fold and you go back to the way things were, and you go back to sleeping together and all of that, you pretty much reset the timer and you need to restart all over again. So giving up doesn't do much of anything, but simply delay the part in which your child learns to sleep alone and to be independent. And the third one is that sometimes sleep training doesn't work simply because you yourself are not convinced that you should do this. And the child picks up on that like that. Because up until the ages of 7 to 8, children are very, very receptive to nonverbal cues. And they immediately pick up on your lack of conviction. So if you're not sure that you really want to do this, but you still go through with it, you inadvertently communicate to the child that you're not sure that this is a good idea. And the child immediately picks up on that. And he says, well, if mom or dad isn't sure, then maybe we shouldn't do it. And he starts resisting the idea more and more. So you need to check yourself and see if it has to do with a lack of conviction on your part. And if it has to do with the lack of conviction on your part, it's probably one of those reasons that I mentioned before for parents refusing to sleep train the child. And you need to see if one of those reasons actually applies to you, and if it does, maybe seek, like I said, maybe seek some therapy and handle the issue, because you can't really convince the child to do that if you're not convinced yourself. You simply cannot fool children like that. Okay, so unless you're a professional con man, you're not going to be able to pull that off with a child. Children are much more perceptive than we give them credit for, and you're not going to be able to get away with it if you're not a believer. No way, Jose. Okay? Now, what happens if there is a setback? So let's say that you have sleep train the child, he begins to sleep alone and everything is wonderful. And then there is a setback. Something happens and he again refuses to sleep alone. Well, two things, not four, two. So, first of all, he may be ill or otherwise feeling unwell for some reason. So, even though I have, like I said, sleep trained my daughter when she was 7 months old, she still to this day, if she's feeling really unwell, if she's got a flu or she's got a fever, or if she's feeling rather unwell physically, she still wants to sleep with her parents, either both of us or at least one of us. So she's fine with at least one of us, but of course prefers both. But as soon as she's feeling better, she without a problem goes and sleeps in her own bed. So if that's the case, maybe don't get so hung up on this detail. It is only normal for the child to want the presence of his parents more when he's not feeling well, and maybe just be understanding when it comes to that. I mean, sure, you could make him sleep in his bed either way, but I don't think that it's such a great idea, simply because I don't think you should be so I don't think that you should take such an extreme stance on this topic. Okay. Second, the second reason why there might be a setback is that there could have been some major life-changing event in the life of the child, and that is from his perspective, not your own. So take into account that the perspective of an adult is different than the perspective of a child. So what is not such a big deal for you might be life-changing events for him. For instance, going to school for the first time is life-changing event for a lot of children. Having a brother or sister born into the family is a life-changing event. Moving houses, moving countries, any change in the regular routine, or any of those things might be considered life-changing event. Now, should you be on the lookout for these things and try to come up with solutions for either one? Well, no, not really. But just acknowledge the fact that some of the changes in the child's life might make him want to go back a step when it comes to his sleeping habits, and might want to make him sleep with his parents for some reason. And if this happens, try to very gently ease him into the sleeping routine, or into the sleeping routine of sleeping alone. Like I said, gently. If there's already major stuff happening in his life, at least from his point of view, he doesn't need you to be strict about this. Okay, so try to be more encouraging and supportive than authoritative and disciplinarian. Now, if he or she isn't the first child, it is better to have him sleeping in a different room than his brothers or sisters, even if they are of the same gender. So even if he's a boy and he has an older brother, it would still be more beneficial if he gets to sleep in his own room, different than the one of his brothers. But I understand that in order for this to happen, you need to have the room necessary for that to happen. So if you have the room, consider making up his own room. If you don't, then yes, he will sleep with his brothers, even sisters. If they are of small age, that's not a major problem. If he needs to share the room, take into account that his brothers or sisters will also enter into a transition phase, like the little one does. And a lot of parents look past this idea because they concentrate on training the little one. But you need to not forget that they are entering a transition phase as well, and you need to be patient with them as well. Okay? So try to remember that, and be patient with them, and offer them your emotional support and your love, and all of that. Now, how can you survive the parenting experts as a way of saying, in parks and online mommy groups and all of that? Because if you're a man, you're not really going to run into this problem a lot, I imagine, because I haven't. But if you're a woman, yeah, you might run into this quite a little bit. And there are a lot of self-proclaimed parenting experts out there, simply because they've read a number of books on the topic. And you are going to get comments if anyone hears that you are planning to sleep train your child, or that you have sleep trained your child into sleeping alone. You will get comments like, yeah, but how are you going to deal with his abandonment trauma later? Or, but I read that you have to sleep with him in bed until he's 7 years old. Or, what a selfish mother you are. All you think about is sex. The baby is more important than your sex life. Or, you'll be sorry that you didn't sleep with him now when he's older. Any number of these things. Now, aside from, like I said, the fact that reading some books on parenting doesn't really make you an expert, keep in mind that everything that someone says has a lot more to do with him than it has to do with you. So, if I were to psychoanalyze all of these remarks, I might tell you a lot about that person's family dynamics, that person's relationship with their children, that person's relationship with their husband or wife, and so on. And that is because these types of remarks are self-disclosing in a major way. So whenever someone tells you this, it shouldn't really trigger an emotional reaction from you, because they are speaking about their own lives, and they're speaking about their own convictions, their own fears, their own traumas, and all of that. However, if it does trigger an emotional response in you, if it does trigger anger, shame, or guilt, then that's a personal trigger that you have, and that's a trigger that's probably related to something from your own personal history, and that's something that you should maybe try to look into in a therapy session, or likely more than one therapy session. But keep in mind that sleep training your child doesn't make you a bad parent. And what can you do to not feel like a bad parent for doing this? Is first that you have to understand that parenting isn't just about kindness and love. It is also about education, and to a lesser extent, discipline. To a lesser extent than most people would probably guess, but it is also about education as much as it is about kindness and love. And a child who has only been given kindness and love will grow up to be and to feel pretty inadequate, because he or she will lack the skills needed to fend for themselves. And as a consequence of that, will have extremely low self-esteem. And if you have extremely low self-esteem and you lack the skills needed to make do in your life, that creates a self-perpetuating vicious circle. Because in order for you to gain skills, you need to have a good self-image. You need to believe in your ability to make that happen. But if you have low self-esteem, then that affects your conviction and your predisposition to try out new things. And because you don't try out new things, you don't learn new things, and that reinforces the entire thing. So you don't want to put your child into that position. And in order for you to not put the child into that position, you need to get over this idea that you are a bad parent simply for teaching your child how to handle a life situation, simply for teaching your child a new ability, which is the ability to sleep alone, the ability to be autonomous and self-reliant at one point, of course, but this can serve as an excellent stepping stone for him to be able to become self-autonomous at a later point in his life. Now, what are some logistical details that will help you in making this transition to him sleeping alone? The first one, and one of the most important, I would say, is that you might want to consider having his bed placed on the floor level. Or, if you don't want to go to the trouble of searching for such a bed, just placing a mattress directly onto the floor. Or if the house gets chilly or you don't have adequate heating or anything like that, you can place the mattress onto a heat mat. These are available pretty much everywhere. There are heat mats specifically for children's rooms, which protect and insulate from cold, and also protect against him falling and hurting himself. So it's dual function, and it's a great idea to place the bed or just the mattress onto such a heat pad, onto such a heat mat, if you want to. Another thing, why this is important is because a lot of times children cry during the night or when they wake up in the morning, simply because they don't have the ability of getting out of their own bed. If they are placed in a crib that has large bars, and so that he doesn't fall and hurt himself during the night, those same bars prevent him from getting out of the bed in the morning. And this a lot of times leads to him crying, and the parent interpreting that crying as a sign that the child hasn't adjusted to sleeping alone. Whereas it might just be the child's frustration that he cannot get out of his own bed. So that's why placing a bed at floor level is tremendously important, and it helps a lot in the child adjusting to sleeping alone. Another thing to consider is to place water in the child's room next to the bed, and make sure that it is handy for him to use, because during the night he might wake up, feel thirsty, and if he doesn't have water near him, he might start crying in order to get your attention and to bring him something to drink. But if he does, he might just drink some water and fall back to sleep, because children, a lot of, if they are not hungry or have other needs at that point, they wake up pretty frequently during the night just to drink water because they are dehydrated. So keep that in mind. Also, you might want to involve the child in arranging or decorating their own room, because this makes them like their room more. If the child likes his room more, you increase the likelihood that he is going to like spending time in that place, and he is going to like even sleeping in that room. Now, you don't need to go overboard in letting him have an input into how the room looks. Keep in mind that children, especially if they are very young, don't really care about the furniture. Okay, so it's usually just a matter of letting him pick something to hang from the ceiling, like some trinkets for babies, or letting him choose some stickers to put on the wall with his favorite animals or his favorite cartoons or stuff like that. So he doesn't need to be picking the shade of the curtains, because he or she probably doesn't even register them. He's not interested in that. So let him pick, but he's not an interior designer, okay? So don't go crazy on this one. But if he gets to pick some things, then anything he picks in his room helps make the room more into his own room, and he gets to have this feeling of ownership when it comes to that room, and this only helps in making the room more appealing to him. And the fourth thing that helps is having a routine. So having a bedtime routine helps a lot in easing the transition to sleeping alone. And children of all ages, and adults as well actually, respond really well to routines. So if you have a well-established routine, sticking to that will help in transitioning him to sleeping alone. A small parenthesis about night lights and white noise machines. I'm not a huge fan of either, so if it doesn't work without them, or if your child is already accustomed to them, then by all means use the night light, use the white noise machine, and all of that. But I am of the opinion that we as human beings of all ages should be able to fall asleep without crutches of some sort, technological or otherwise. So if you can make do without these things, you should attempt to do so. But like I said, if the child is already accustomed to them, you don't need to change up his routine all that much, because like I said, routines are something that they thrive on. And just keep the white noise machine or the nightlight or both, and ease him into sleeping alone. And maybe consider gradually phasing out the nightlight and the white noise machine later on down the road, because like I said, in an ideal situation, he or she should reach a point where those things are needed, and where he can fall asleep without the help of such things. Okay, so if you've reached this point and you've watched the recording up until this point, I am very grateful for your attention and your time, and I hope that, that it was useful to you. If you want to go a little bit further, I have a program called How to Be a Better Parent for Your Child, and in order for you to check out what that program is all about, you can follow the first link in the description or the first comment, depending on where you're seeing this recording. It's not a detailed program. It's not I'm not going on and on about all the 10,000 plus situations that can come up when you are a parent, but I do go over the high level stuff and the principles so that you know how to think about situations when it comes to parenting, and I'm not telling you what to think. And I think that this approach of teaching you the principles and how to approach a specific situation is more valuable than if I were to try to give you the answer for everything that might come up, because it's easier on your time, it's easier on my time, and it's much more practical like that. So if you're interested in that, go and check the link. If you want to book a therapy session with me, you can do so by all means. The second link in the description it will take you to the booking page. And either way, whether you want to do that or not, that's up to you. I would very much appreciate it if you were to send this recording to anyone who might benefit from this information, because like I said, I have seen that that there is a great need for this type of information, and I don't know how much I will be able to promote this video by myself. So if you have friends or acquaintances that you know might benefit from this, please do me the favor of sending them the link and help me spread this message to as many people as possible. And if you, and of course, if you've liked the stuff that I've discussed and you think that, and you thought it was helpful, also don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the notification bell, because I do upload pretty regularly, and that way you are kept in the loop and get to see more videos from me. Like I said, I really much appreciate your patience in sticking out up until this point. I know it's been quite a long recording, but it's a pretty it is a pretty complicated topic. So if I could have done it in less time than this, I would have, but it is what it is. Thank you, and I hope that you will tell me about your successes in teaching your children to sleep alone. And I hope that I will be hearing about how this change in routine has improved the lives of both you as parents and your children as well. Thank you very much, and you take care now. Bye.